It was quite tense. We knew we were going around the peninsula, Sherbrooke Peninsula, to avoid being shot down by our own troops. And one odd thing about it was that the colonel had a $25 bet with the pilot that he couldn't drop us on the right field. And as we approached the jump field, the flak and so forth, the firing at the planes, the pilot was swaying the plane side to side and did not slow up to the so-called 110 miles an hour. We estimated about 150. And when we finally went out of the door, the shock was so terrific, it tore my musette bag and a lot of other webbing, my ammunition and so forth, off from me. I carried a Thompson submachine gun with the barrel behind my reserve and hanging on with my left hand to the stock so I wouldn't get hit in the face. When the chute opened, I realized we were in the right spot. It was a moonlight night. I could see the highway on my left, but there was a lot of hedge rows with tall trees, and I couldn't make up my mind if I was going to miss one or go over one. And finally, I came crashing into the trees, and I hung about 20 feet off the ground. There was some Germans behind a barn. They had already shot my sergeant in the leg, and I was afraid they'd see me up in the tree. We had the old-fashioned buckles, and when you're hanging, you just can't reach down to unbuckle those things. But we had a little switchblade knife in the front of your jacket to help to cut shroud lines if your feet were caught in it. I used the knife to cut the two leg straps, forgetting about my chest strap, and when those two leg straps let go, my body slipped and that chest strap got me under the chin, so I had to hang on, and with my right hand I finally cut that one and fell down in the bushes and got my men organized. We had a 5-man patrol to go 20 miles outside of Carentan to report all the traffic that was going by and report it back to our organization. And as we started in the dark, I used my compass and so forth. We would run across some of our old men in the ditch, and with our little cricket, we'd crick and he'd crick back. And as daylight broke along one hedge, I saw a little pup tent, which I knew wasn't ours. It had to be the Germans. And I asked the officer to give me a couple of men, and I go see who's in that tent. But he told me that our job is not to be seen. I said, what will I do? Well, he says, cut another hedge. So I had to run across another field and get into another hedge. But as you slip in, I looked back and I saw these two shiny helmets. And I knew they weren't ours because we had netting on our helmets. But they disappeared. And we knew there was a so-called Russian cavalry farm. There were Russians that got captured by the German and agreed to fight for the German. That's all we knew about it when I looked at the aerial photographs. Anyhow, the Robert Watts from Seabrook, New Hampshire was behind me, and I told him to make sure to stay a good 50 yards behind me all the time. And as I went along a hedge and came to a fence along a highway, or dirt road, I should say, I looked up and down the road. Before I had a chance to cross the fence, I heard this shot, and I turned around, and these two guys that I seen with the helmet had come out of the bushes, and Robert Watts had shot one from the hip, and the other one was trying to throw his hands up, and Robert Watts shot him too. And I went back there on time to hear him mumble something about Americano shot me or something like that. But it didn't bother me. That was the first two dead I'd seen. But we kept on going, and as we expected, we came out in these fields that were flooded. They had expected the German might flood these fields, so we couldn't get across. Although they had told us that we'd have some A-20 aircraft drop some rubber bullets, which we never seen. And we finally had to give up, and the officer says, well, we'll turn back and we'll go as far as the last farm we just passed. And we went back there and trying to dry up, and the officer says, who's going to volunteer to go look for the outfit? So big me, I volunteered and started down the road back towards where we had originally jumped. And I went by this little town with a church steeple, a small church steeple, not knowing that the Germans were up there with machine gun, but they must have thought I was a head scout, so they let me by. And a few minutes later, I came to a junction in the road, and I debated which one to take, and I took the right one. and about a half mile further down, I ran across two of our boys, American boys, the radar guys that had jumped to set radar direct the planes in. And the first one I run across, he was in the road, and it looked like his head had been bashed in, and the radar set was sitting right next to him. And we had been trained to blow those up, so I pulled 2 grenades and put them on top and ran into the ditch and blew it up. And then I went down the road and found another one. His head was in the ditch, and his feet were in the road. And I thought I'd go into his first aid kit to get that card with his name and address, but I realized he had an entrenching shovel laying sideways on his back, and I realized right away that was a booby trap. And then I got scared. I said, what am I doing here all alone? So I turned around and headed back towards the junction. When I got to the junction, I met our boys marching. They were organized. They were heading towards the front, and later on when they went to that small village with the steeple, I heard quite a few of them got shot up.